Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and now it's time for another Q&A segment. Alright, so I'm back with another video. I'm sorry to have taken a little bit of a break off. I've been a little bit under the weather recently. You might be able to tell from the way my voice sounds even now. But I'm back and I'm going to try to get a little bit better about keeping on top of my Wednesday and Saturday videos because I've been slacking a little bit. So I'm going to get back on top of that soon. Alright, so here's another Q&A segment. So my first question comes from Truth Seeker. And Truth Seeker wanted to know what the difference is between humans and animals. Now, on one hand, what I say is going to be a complete conjecture and based on my external experience of animals, because I've never been any other animal than a human being. And also, I'm speaking very, very generally because, of course, animals have all sorts of different ways of being. The way an ant is going to be completely different from the way a giraffe is. But I would say that the primary difference between humans and animals is that human beings have the ability to create abstract concepts and to kind of fantasize and create concepts into the future. So we can see a leaf on a tree, and then we can also see purple in a sunset, and then we can come up with the idea of a purple leaf, which doesn't actually exist in nature. Well, sometimes they do, but let's say that we had never seen a purple leaf before. We could create that as a concept in our mind. So human beings have the ability for abstract thinking and for creative thinking. So generally speaking, I would guess that animals don't have too much of an ability to do that because animals don't create the same type of things that we do. Now, having said that, I think that this is like one of our greatest strengths as human beings, but it's also a great weakness because animals have the ability to live just in the present moment because they're not caught up in all these abstract thoughts, where human beings are usually stuck in our concepts of the past, our concepts of the future, what we want, and this creates a lot of unhappiness. And most people that you meet are usually pretty unhappy, and I think that it's because they can't really accept things as they are in the same way that an animal can. And so, in a sense, if a human being learns to live in tune with the present moment without getting too wrapped up in their concepts, there's an ability for great happiness, but then also you still retain that ability to create things in the world in a way that animals could not. So it's kind of a catch-22. So I would say that is the primary difference between humans and animals, generally speaking. Alright, the next question comes from Step 1, and Step 1 wants to know, how do you do self-inquiry? Well, self-inquiry is the process of observing what goes on in your own field of awareness and asking yourself questions and looking for the answer in a genuine way. So, for example, if I were going to do a science experiment out in nature and I wanted to observe the habits of ants, I would go and I would observe ants over a period of time, and I would ask certain questions like, where do ants get their food? How do ants work together to create the colony? These type of things, and I would look for those authentically in my everyday experience to answer that question. And so essentially you want to turn that observing nature back on yourself. And for this reason, self-inquiry is one of the best processes for actually seeing the truth of yourself, and that is enlightenment. So one of the best questions that you can ask during self-inquiry is, who is perceiving all of the perceptions in my field of awareness? Look for the person that you call me. So let's say, okay, I'm perceiving all these things. Let's say there's sight, there's sound, there's touch, there's taste, there's smell, and then I also have thoughts popping up, and then emotions come into play too. And those are mostly all of the perceptions that we have. So you want to ask the question during self-inquiry, who's perceiving all of those? And then actually look for a perceiver. Like, what's perceiving the sensations in my foot? Is it up here in my head? Is it this little person that I think is like behind my eyes? Or where do you find that? And you want to find an authentic answer to that. Now, there are also other questions that you can ask yourself to get a real clear sense of what you're experiencing. Because we have all of our senses, our five senses, and our thoughts, and our emotions, oftentimes we'll arbitrarily link those things together, and we'll start to think of them as like one whole thing because they all happen within our experience. And so you want to ask questions like, oh, how do I experience emotions? Do I just experience an emotion in thought? Is it going on in my thoughts? Or is it something more in the body? And look for your experience of your own emotions. Also ask, how are thoughts and emotions connected? And find that answer in your own experience. Don't make things up, but actually find how thoughts influence emotions. Also, we have a tendency to link together arbitrarily our senses. So when we touch something, like let's say I'm touching this piece of paper right here. Right now I have that sensation that I'm feeling, but at the same time, when I imagine feeling the sensation, if I close my eyes, I automatically imagine myself touching this piece of paper. But if you notice that within your field of tactile awareness, your awareness of your own sensations, the visual aspect isn't there. It's as though these two things are happening in a completely different space. And so you want to ask yourself, are you linking arbitrarily any senses together? And when you take away that belief that, oh, I'm touching the paper, what you have is you just have a sensation that's occurring within your field of awareness of your own sensations. So you want to ask yourself the question, like, what exactly is going on with each one of my senses? And you can get a more simple and clear idea of what your experience is actually like outside of your conceptual awareness. Alright, so the next question comes from That Matt, and That Matt wants to know, is enlightenment really worth it? Now, what enlightenment is it's waking up to the truth of who you really are. It's transcending ego and sort of expanding your self-concept to include all of existence, and you feel very whole from this. And having had two experiences of ego transcendence in the past, I can say that it is absolutely it's very heavenly. It's like heaven on earth to actually experience that, and it's right here in your awareness right now. You just have to wake up to it. Now, that being said, enlightenment isn't inherently any more value than non-enlightenment. It's not going to amount to anything more in the grand scheme of things because everything will constantly always be in a state of flux. So things will still happen, people will still die, the world won't become perfect. It's not an escape from the trappings of humanity, it's waking up to see the truth of how it is. However, I would argue that it is absolutely worth it, because when you see things for the truth of how they are, you remove all needless suffering. A lot of our suffering comes from the illusion of us being this separate self walking around inside of this body, because there's automatically this notion that's just in the background all times, oh, one day I'm going to be gone and one day all of this will be pointless. And if you're going from an egoic perspective, that is absolutely true. However, from the more universal perspective that you would be waking up to, you would realize that death was really an illusion, and that, nothing could ever really actually be harmed. Nothing ever is destroyed completely. So I would argue that it is worth it to seek enlightenment. However, if you choose not to, that's equally valid too. So for me, it is absolutely appropriate for me to seek enlightenment, and I consider it a very valuable thing, and I do hope to actually be able to wake up one day, just because I've had those couple of experiences, and they were such positive experiences that I would like to live my life from that mindset. However, it's not necessarily for everyone, and it's not any more valuable to be enlightened than it is to not be enlightened. It's just really a preference. So for me, I prefer to live from that perspective, but if it's not something that speaks to you, or if it's something that, all of the things having to do with enlightenment sound very, very scary from the egoic perspective, and so it's not any less valuable to stay in the egoic perspective. It doesn't make you a worse person, and you shouldn't feel like you have to do that to live a meaningful life, because a meaningful life is possible from both perspectives. So that's my take on that. It's absolutely worth seeking enlightenment if you're interested. If not, it's absolutely worth staying in the egoic perspective. Alright, so that's all I have for you for today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Again, I'm going to continue staying on these videos from here on out. And remember to post me your comments below in the comments section, and I'll see about getting them on my next Q&A segment. Other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and until next time, keep becoming more you.